Hi, I'm David Novak, the former co-founder, chairman, and CEO of Yum Brands, which is Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, and KFC. And I'm also the author of a new book, Take Charge of You: How Self-Coaching Can Transform Your Life and Your Career. Today, on this podcast, I'm going to talk about three things that are very, very important. Number one, how your upbringing is so important. How growing up in 23 states by the time I was in seventh grade really shaped my leadership thinking. Number two, really understanding what it is in your life that gives you joy and blocks your joy, and then developing an action plan that will help you accomplish the single biggest thing that will give you the maximum out of your life. And last but not least, I want to talk about leadership and how you need to develop yourself by teaching other people. One of the best things you can do is teach other people everything you know about leadership, and then you will help grow your organization, and it's the most efficient and effective thing you could ever do. So get a teachable point of view and put it to work.
Welcome back to our delicious conversation with David Novak. This is part two of our two-part conversation with David. David is the co-founder, retired chairman, and CEO of Yum Brands. You may have heard of those. They are an international global organization that when David was with them, they were a $32 billion market capital. David is also the number one New York Times bestselling author of Taking People With You, The Only Way to Make Big Things Happen. And he is the author of a brand new book just out called Taking Charge of You: How Self-Coaching Can Transform Your Life and Your Career. And in the first part of the show, we talked a lot about, the Great Recession. We talked about why people leave, why people stay. We talked about building a culture of recognition. And we talked about dignity and the power of dignity and what it really means to do that at the highest level of leadership. In part two here, we want to talk more about your brand new book, David, and we want to talk about what it really means and how you sort of got to this idea of really being somebody able to self-coach. So let's start there. First of all, tell everybody the name of the book again. I just want everybody to get it. And this is your second book. Your other one was a New York Times bestseller. Tell us how this one came about as well.
Well, this is the title of this book is Take Charge of You: How Self-Coaching Can Transform Your Life and Career. And one of my passions stuff has always been leadership development. When I was at Yum Brands, I taught a leadership program called Taking People With You: The Only Way to Make Big Things Happen. I taught it to over 4,000 people around the globe. It was a 2.5-day program. I taught every bit of the program. I didn't delegate it to anybody else. I had people come in with the single biggest thing that they were working on that could grow the company, and then I helped them develop an action plan to take people with them so that they could get it done. And people said, "Hey, David, how can you possibly spend that much time on leadership development?" I said, "It's the most efficient use of time I could possibly have. Number one, I get to meet all the people in the company. Okay, I understand what's going on. Number two, I get to help them with the projects that are the most important things in our company. And number three, I get to really talk about the kind of culture and work environment, what we really want to do at Yum Brands." So it was just a win-win-win. And when I left Yum Brands, I never ever thought about retiring. I wanted to take my passion for leadership development, take it to the next level. So one of the things I did do is I wrote another book called Oh Great One, which is a parable about the awesome power of recognition. And then I said, I really love the, coaching, but I kind of agree with you. Coaching is one of these, general phrases people kind of like throw out. Okay. But there isn't a lot of specificity around what it really means and how you can really impact people. But I love to play golf. And one of the guys I was working with is this guy named Jason Goldsmith. And Jason worked with Jason Day in golf and helped him become number one in the world. Then he worked with Justin Rose and helped him do the same. And he's still working with both those guys today. And, I got to know Jason through some golf work, and we hit it off. He became one of my best friends. I said, I want to write a book, but I've written a couple books. I want to get a new twist on it. What if we wrote a book together about coaching? Because I see how you coach in sports and I see how I coach in business. And I actually think that we're pretty well aligned, and maybe we can help people with some process and some exercises that would help people find their path to achieving whatever potential that they have. And based on the idea, and we went to work on it, and we came up with this book. And the reason why we focus on self-coaching is that so many people are frustrated that they're not getting the coaching that they want at work. Okay, the development that they want to work, want at work. I would say the leadership development is what we're really talking about here.
Yes.
And so your life and your career is way too important to delegate that to someone else. You have to take accountability for it. I mean, my mom and dad, one thing about them, you know my background growing up in a trailer, they said, hey, don't make any excuses. Don't be a victim. You're accountable. You be accountable for your own development, and making friends and being successful in school. Don't wait for somebody else to do that for you. And I think that kind of stuck with me. And one day sitting in my office, I said, I know the perfect title for this book. It's Take Charge of You. And I think it's right on, particularly with what's going on with the Great Resignation. People are looking for, how did they work their way to the next solution? And the other thing too that I think is very interesting in this day and age, people talk about wellness. Well, wellness, the smart companies know that wellness starts with you. They want you to be happy. They want you to know that, they want you to take accountability, for the impact that you can provide in the organization. So if you can help people within an organization, determine what their joy is, how they can pursue that joy, leverage that joy to drive, even better results, then I think you're on to something there. And that's what we're trying to do with this book. Is, I people always talk about potential. Well, what does potential basically means? You haven't done it yet. Okay.
Exactly.
And so what I think self-coaching is all about is helping you maximize the potential you have within to achieve, the goals that you have that will, give you the joy you should be getting out of life.
It's interesting you say that, because referencing back to, our previous conversation where we talked about you growing up in a trailer. And one of the things I threw out the term trailer trash, because it's one of those, it's really, it's a bias. There's no other way to put it. It's a horrible bias. And I use the language of it, but it's a horrible bias. And with it always comes a plethora of judgments, including a lack of self-accountability. And here was you who lived in trailers across the United States with all these people who had a great community, who all supported each other, and this sort of foundational piece of no blame game. You have to be responsible for yourself. You have to be self-accountable. Was that the sort of seeds of looking at what coaching was for you?
Well, my mother was a fantastic coach. Okay. My dad was sort of like the standard bearer. Okay. My mother, she really gave me great wisdom and great, and great insight, and was always there with me, pushing me to take it to the next level and understand myself better so that I could perform. The foundation of great coaching, and you're a great coach, Dov. People go to you all the time. And the reason why they do that is because you help them gain a self-awareness of themselves, a transformational insight that they wouldn't have gotten to without you. Okay. And that's what I think great coaching is all about. But I believe that you don't have to have somebody like you or me do that for somebody. That you can take accountability yourself for doing that. If you have a process that you can use, a thought, some exercises you can go through that'll force you to think about who you are and where you want to go, you can take accountability for your own coaching. And that's what, Yeah, that's what I'm hoping to do with this. And the other thing that I really believe, it's very hard to be a great coach unless you know how to coach yourself. Okay.
Yeah.
Once you learn how to take charge of yourself, be accountable for your own development, and you learn how to do that yourself. And I've interviewed many leaders. I got to tell you, they are all they know themselves inside and out. They figure out what they got to do to get to the next level, the company the next level. They take that awareness, develop an action plan to get done, and they go forward. And that's what I think coaching is all about, and self-coaching is all about.
You just said something that I think is profound, because I think that it's missed. So there are people who become leaders and they become pretty good, and there are leaders who are at they're premium, they're at the top, and people will often ask me, "What do you think the difference is?" And I say, barring all but a few exceptions, in my experience, the ones who can't break through the ceiling they're at, the difference between them and the ones who are at the very top is the ones at the very top have gained the gonads to look in the mirror. They have had the courage to look in the mirror and say, where is my weaknesses? Where are my strengths? And they've self-examined, and they're not afraid of self-examination in order to transform into that next level. Whereas the leaders who hit that glass ceiling seem to me to be like, I'm all that in a bag of chips. But if I look in the mirror and I discover there's things that people will see my weakness, and every leader I know that I've worked with who is at the cream of the crop have all gone, yeah, I was doing really good. And then I hit the wall and I realized I cannot ignore X anymore. I have to look at that. That self-examination piece as part of the self-coaching to me is very interesting that you brought that up.
Well, you and I had to write the next book together, okay? Because I couldn't agree with you more, And I think what you're talking about here is I call it unhealthy dissatisfaction with the status quo. The very best leaders are never, ever satisfied. Okay. They take some pleasure and achievement and achieving goals, but they're always looking for the next thing. What do they do what they need to do to make themselves better? What do they need to do to make their business better? And, somebody ought to do a podcast called Stay Curious. Okay. Because I think it's a pretty good idea. And staying curious is absolutely critical as it relates to your own self-development and your business. And one of the things I've learned is that the number one trait of the very best leaders that I see, they are active learners. Okay. Yes. They learn, and they not only just learn, I call it active learners because they not just learn, they put it to action. See? Mm-hmm. It's one thing to know something, not do anything about it. Okay. No, these people, they learn and they figure out, okay, this is what I'm going to do about it. If you talk to Jamie Dimon, okay, who runs JP Morgan Chase, let me tell you something. He has an unhealthy dissatisfaction for the status quo. I mean, he knows himself well. He's constantly tried to improve his things. Look at Tom Brady. He's the greatest of all time in football. I've done a podcast with him. If you talk to Tom Brady, I mean, there is nothing that he won't do to get himself an extra edge. He's always defining how he can take his performance to the next level. And, I think you have to take accountability yourself for that. You have to have high self-awareness. You got to think through what really makes you tick. Make sure that you're not wasting your life. One of the things we talk about in Take Charge of You is the importance of understanding what your joy blockers are. What blocks your joy? What gets in the way of your happiness and joy? And then what are your joy builders? Yeah. And then you can begin to say, okay, how am I spending my time? Wouldn't it be great if we could all be like Warren Buffett and write a book called Tap Dancing to Work? Why does he tap dance to work? I mean, he tap dances to work. I know Warren well. We got together once a year, every year. And this guy is the most enthusiastic learner I've ever met in my life. And he learns about business. He loves business. He can't get enough of it. And that's why you got to find your joy, because joy is what makes you hungry. So, if you love something, you can't get enough of it. I always say, think about that girl you first met. And, I mean, you fall in love with her. I mean, you got to be around her all the time. You can't get enough of her. This is like, that's what love is all about. And if you can, you can go through the process of really figuring out what gives you the most joy and spending your time on it, man, you got a big advantage on a lot of people. So many people, they get to 50, 55, 60 years old, and they look back and go, what happened? And by the way, it happens fast.
Yeah. Way
So,
too fast.
and that's what I think is happening with this great resignation, COVID, people having time to self-reflect. They're sitting there going, geez, I'm going to be 55 years old before I know it. What am I doing with my life? Am I achieving what I need to achieve? Am I making the world a better place? Am I using the skills that I have?
Well, that's why I was saying before, the great resignation is in many ways a crisis in meaning, in that people are asking those kinds of questions. They're going, what is the meaning of what I'm doing? Like,
yeah,
even if I've got all this stuff, whatever that is it got any meaning? And, you just said something there that I want to sort of tail back on, because I think it was really important for people to get, is in a goal-driven world where we're all trained to go after the next thing, we can get that thing and then want the next thing, but they're almost disconnected, other than the accolade of having achieved them. And what you said there to me is much more to the point, which is, if you find out what brings you joy, you're always hungry for more of it. It's not from a place of give me more and I'm gonna accumulate all the accolades. It's give me more because I just love it. I'm in love with this. Like people, you said about Warren Buffett, that he loves learning about business. Anybody could turn to Warren and go, dude, you don't think you know enough about business? It's not about whether he knows enough. People ask me all the time, why are you studying this? Or why are you studying that, Dove? You're the best in the world at this. You know more about that than anybody else I've ever met or ever heard of. Because I love it. It's not because I don't have enough. It's because I love it. And it's that hunger that is love-based hunger. That's what I love that you brought up, because that's a real big piece around the self-coaching of going after that rather than external. Go after that. That's internal.
Yeah. For me, it's like you find out what it is that gives you joy. Then you say, okay, what's the single biggest thing I can do to get me marching down that path? What's my single biggest thing? If what would I like to have someday? I want to dream big. This is get me to where my joy is. Okay. And then you develop an action plan on how to really get there, and understand yourself enough to make the changes you need to make, or leverages the strengths that you have so that you can actually get there. But I could, your point about looking yourself in the mirror. Oh, that is so true. The first thing you got to do in business in any situation is you got to define reality. You have to define reality. And that is the same thing for yourself. You got to define reality. You got to see the world the way it really is, not the way you want it to be. Okay? And that's what, I think, you have to go through that process of making that happen. And what's really amazing is I think 80%, the number is staggering at how many people don't feel like they're getting that kind of investment from other people in them. And absolutely. I think that is, I'll tell you a great coaching story. This is a self-coaching story. When I founded Young Brands, my partner was Andy Pearson. Andy Pearson used to be the president of PepsiCo. And then he went on to be a teacher at Harvard Business School. Okay. The first year he taught at Harvard Business School, they did these 360 reviews and ratings by the students. He was the lowest rated professor in the whole school. And he found out why. He kind of came up from the world as you just tell people this is how you're supposed to think. But he didn't get people thinking on their own. And so he realized that he had to develop a much more case history, case-oriented teaching process. And he did that the next year. The next year, he's the highest rated professor in the business school. But that's a guy who wasn't happy with those kind of results. didn't like what he saw when he saw those results. I guarantee you, he was going, those guys are full of shit. I can't even believe this, and then, but he said, you know what? There's probably a kernel of truth in there. And he found what that kernel is. And then he had a transformational insight, and then he did something about it.
But that's so on point, because I think that people stop halfway through. We all have an ego. We're all going to have an ego reaction to when we get a feedback that's not what we want. That's normal, and that's natural, and that's okay. But do you stay with your ego, or do you invest in something bigger and more important than that? And that's what he did. Like his ego would have went, oh, these idiots don't know what the hell they're talking about. And then suddenly would have went, okay, I've got to do better. And then took that on by looking inwardly. When we look at the formula you've laid out in the book, one of the things I would really like to do is get people started on this idea, this understanding of how to begin coaching themselves. And I think you've given us some really good insights around define reality is a great place to start, and search for your joy. But those kinds of things can become a bit nebulous. So start us off, David. Just walk us through a little bit so that somebody can be in that process.
Well, I do think you have to start out with your finding, defining the joy blockers and your joy builders. No question about that. That will help you figure out what is the single biggest thing that you could do in your life that could transform your life and career, around the focus of your joy. And you got to take the time to do some future back thinking. Okay. Envision the destination of where you want to go, and truly dream big about it. Okay. Then you got to open yourself up to growth. Okay. You got to have a mindset of coaching, and you've got to kind of, balance the negatives that you see in yourself with the positives, put things into perspective, try to get yourself in a neutral state so you can make the best possible decisions in terms of, how you're thinking through your process. And, people, a lot of times they go, I haven't done this. I haven't done this. I haven't done that. Put yet at the end of that phrase. I haven't done this yet. Okay. Get a different mindset, because you got to open yourself up for growth. You can't be stagnant. Okay. And then, I think you've got to develop a plan. What's your plan now? Okay. You know where you're going to go. You know what your single biggest thing is. How are you going to get this done? Okay. And, this is where I think everybody needs some assistant coaches. When I say you're a self-coach, that doesn't mean you totally go it alone. It's just you go to others with purpose. Okay. If you want to be the best financial person, okay, who are the financial people you really admire? Make them your assistant coaches. Have them come to go to them and ask them how they got to where they are and what they think you need to do to get to where you're at. Okay. That helps you really develop a plan. And then, I think you got to start your roadmap, and just like anything else, track your progress, set some goals. If you don't measure it, you're not going to achieve it. And you said this, and this last thing I think is really important is you got to have a self-coaching habit. You talk about this with the leaders, they do this all the time. It's constant self-improvement. It's constantly looking for ways to get the edge. And one of the ways how I think you can really do that is go public with what you're trying to get done. Tell people, this is what I want to do. Okay. And let me tell you something. When you do that, it puts a lot of pressure on you, because when you go public, you can't go back. Right. Because it's like, it's crazy. And the other thing too, is if you really want to get in the habit of really seeing yourself and motivating yourself, create your personal highlight reel. Okay. What are the things you can look back in your life that really gives you some confidence that you can achieve as you go forward, and use your environment to also, keep you up. As we started this out, you really gave me a great introduction, you get me going, but you gotta, you're helping me with my personal highlight reel, you're giving me that motivation. use your environment. See, I use every office I have. I always use every office I have to really stimulate me and get me to believe in the capabilities that I have. My dad, I remember when he retired, he was a government worker, high school education, but he grew went as high as he could in the government without a college education. And but I went to his retirement party and they gave him 3 or 4 things. He says, I'm going to put these in my I love me corner. Okay.
Fabulous.
Yeah. And you know what? I make every office I have a I love me office, because I want to believe in what I'm able to achieve by just looking around and using my environment to really highlight what's really important to me. My family, success, other people. Like if you go in my office and at Yum Brands, my office was filled with people I recognized all around the world, from floor to ceiling. And then when I ran out of wall space, I started putting people that I recognized around the world on the ceiling. Okay. Because I guarantee you, when people walk into my office, they knew that, people was what I stood for, and recognizing people is what I stood for. And, these kinds of things, you kind of just that was kind of my self-coaching habit. I constantly wanted to feed other people and myself around the things that would reinforce what's really important.
Yeah, and I think that we undervalue or under recognize there's these. I always think that human beings tend to operate generally in polarities. We're seeing a lot in the world of that today, but that's never where true joy is. And so we operate in these polarities, and one polarity is which is be a complete egomaniac and tell everybody what to do, and any success is your success, and it's got nothing to do with the people you're leading. It was your master plan, and that's why it is. And you might smooth that over and make it look different than that, but that's basically what's driving it on one end. And on the other end is, no, you've got to be really humble and never cheer for yourself, and don't let everybody know that you feel too good about yourself. And to me, both of those are absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense. The bottom line is no one makes it alone. So you need to celebrate everybody who assists you and serves you in bringing what it is you're trying to do to the world. But you also need to cheer for yourself, and you need to be on your team, and you need to be on other people's team and cheer for them. So, when I first started doing my intros the way I did them, I got a lot of pushback. Well, that's a bit Barnum and Bailey for me. I'm not that kind of guy. I don't really like that. I think, I'd like it to be a little more professional. After all, I'm a Harvard professor. After all, I'm a Cambridge professor. And I'd go, okay. And I'd just say, yeah. And then I wouldn't do it on purpose. And every one of them went, oh, that was so great. Because we all need it.
Well, the other reason why it's great, Dev, is that, I probably couldn't do what you just did, but you can do it because it's you. Okay,
yeah, exactly.
You've looked yourself enough in the mirror to know who you are, and you say, bullshit, I'm going to be me. I'm not going to be somebody else. I'm going to be who I am. And that's what really is important.
Exactly. But I want to cheer for people.
I don't want to overwhelm people and anything like that.
I want to cheer for people. I want to celebrate them doing what it is they've done, even if it isn't what I want to do. It's what you like. Oh my God, I can learn from you. I'm cheering for you because I want my audience to cheer for you. Because if you're enthusiastic, you hear me say, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for David Novak. It's like, okay, I thought it was in a podcast. Wow, I'm in an auditorium. I'm listening to this guy, and there's 10,000 of us listening, 20,000 of us, 100,000 of us listening to David Novak. This guy is the bee's knees, man. I should shut the heck up, stop doing other things, and listen to David Novak. He's got some serious diamonds to drop here.
One of the things that I think we're capturing here, and it's we talked about, there's too much polarization. Okay, but the best leaders are extremely confident and humble. Okay.
Absolutely.
Nobody wants to follow somebody that doesn't give people a sense that they know where they're going, but they're humble enough, okay, to let other people know that they need them. They know they can't get it done by themselves. And humility is saying, I need you. Okay. I don't have all the answers. I need you. So I think you have to have a healthy confidence, a healthy belief in yourself, and balanced with the humility that says to other people that you need it. Because if you're totally confident and arrogant that you don't need it, nobody's going to follow you that way. Okay.
No.
And if you're so humble that you'll never make a decision because you're trying to be this, and then you become milquetoast. That's why I think that middle spot is confidence yet and humble. Okay.
Yeah,
That's how I look at it.
I talk about it as having certainty about who you are and what you do, and absolute dedication to understanding and recognizing that you're never going to be able to do it on your own. So so my purpose drives me, but I have no idea how to do it. And I am always looking for new ways to fulfill it. And I want to recognize you for helping me to do it. And I think that what you just said there is such an important thing. Have the confidence, have the commitment, have even the energy to say, yeah, this is, so people are drawn to that. Of course they are, but they need to feel like they're part of it. They're part of that engine.
I had the great fortune, John Weinberg, one of the top people at Goldman Sachs. He was the head partner with this guy named Mr. Whitehead. Okay. But anyway, he told me once, he was on our board. He says, David, let me tell you something, what I've learned over the years. These crusty guys. He says, you either grow or you swell. I love that.
Pretty much it.
It's so true.
Well, David, we are already at the end of the second part of the show, and this has been a pure joy and a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much. I know your time is valuable. It's difficult to squeeze things in between your own podcast, the programs you run, and of course your golf swing. So let's not forget that.
Yeah, let's not forget the important
Let's not forget that. So I really appreciate you being with us, and I would love for you to just tell our audience more about where they can find out more about you, all your wonderful resources and the books.
Yeah. Well, I think you can go to davidnovakleadership.com and learn about the nonprofit leadership programs that I have. And then for aspiring leaders, like people who listen to this show, I'd go to howleaderslead.com, and you can go online, see the podcast, the digital leadership programs we have, the books that we offer up. And one of the things I enjoy doing is I do daily inspirations on Twitter. So you can go to at David Novak Ogo and follow me on Twitter as well.
I do too, so you should go there. And make sure you get the books, read the books. Honestly, there's so much value here. And again, David's podcast is available to you. You can go there, and that will also be there. Like I said, we'll make sure that you have all the links for all of those resources available to you in the show notes. Again, thank you, David Novak. We are honored, and it was a pleasure chatting with you, sir. I hope you'll stay with us to the end. And as we say goodbye to you, dear listener, I want to thank you for tuning in. I want to let you know that you can hang out with other conscious leaders and chat about this episode or any of our past episodes inside of our Facebook or LinkedIn groups. Just go to Leadership and Loyalty Podcast. It doesn't matter how successful you are. If your employees and your customers don't understand what gives your company meaning, you're only working at a fraction of your true capability. To find out how you can hire me, Dov Baron, as a speaker or leadership strategist for yourself or your organization, simply go to dovbaron.com. That's DOVBARON.com. Because unified actualized meaning is the one single monolithic difference between greatness and mediocrity in individuals and companies. I want to thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. Till next time, stay curious, my friends. Stay curious about how you can look a little deeper into yourself, to coach yourself and take charge of your life and your career. Don't put it in anybody else's hands. Use them as your assistant coaches. I'm Dov Baron. I'm here to assist you tapping into your deep greatness to reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership impact. And I am out.